Hello and welcome to another update. In this one I'll be covering the whole front line, starting out in the north where the Russian forces continue their active defense around Kreminna. So here we see the fighting is occurring in the direction of Makiivka, west of Ploshenka, northwest and southwest of Chernopopivka, west of Kreminna in the direction of Sarishne, south of Dubrova, and west of Shipilivka, both in the direction of the Serebryansky forest area. So to explain again what active defense is, it is when you have some positions that you defend and the opponent continues their attacks against those positions. As soon as you see an opening, you take advantage of that and advance a bit, and then focus on this new position to defend that, which is what we have been seeing here west of Kreminna. This punch through the Ukrainian forces here in the center was because of Ukrainian offensives that failed, and then the Russians advanced a bit. Then we see the same happening here in the Siversk front, where fighting continues by Bilorivka, Verkhokamyansk, and Spirne, where the Russian forces are conducting active defense here as well, where in Bilorivka the Ukrainians have successfully pushed back the Russian forces despite their tactics. Then we move on to the Bakhmut front, where here the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of Selezhnyansk, the E40 highway by Orihova-Slivka to the south, and between Hrihorivka and Bohdanivka, as well as in the direction of Khomove. So here in the northern flank, the Russian forces have also started doing active defense, as most Wagner units from this area have been replaced by Russian forces of the army, and that is for the Wagnerians to focus on Bakhmut itself, as they have given up on encircling the city. So they gave up encircling the city a while ago, and that is when the forces captured most of Orihova-Slivka, and then they just stopped. And since then they have given up, and that is most likely because of the Ukrainian prisoner of war who told the Russian forces that the Ukrainians have underground tunnels between Chasiv Yar and Bakhmut, and that this underground tunnel area is exactly what is supplying the Ukrainian forces within the city. So after the Russian forces found out that the Ukrainians just had some underground tunnel to supply the Ukrainian forces within the city, they decided that an encirclement of the city wouldn't actually mean much compared to the efforts it takes to actually encircle the city. So they switched their focus and momentum on the city itself, which is why we've seen a lot of recent advances by Bakhmut itself rather than on the outskirts. And adding to that, we see today that the Russian forces yesterday managed to capture these areas, which is marked in light blue. And as you can see, the map is much less cluttered now. And that is because I have removed the March recap for Bakhmut onto my recap map, where I have January, February, and March. January is only until the 20th of January, and I'm still waiting to add more as soon as I have enough time for that. But as you can see, this is color-coded based on the month. This is March, this is February, and this is January. And I've moved up to archive the recap maps. So now it is only April, so for the next couple of weeks, it will be April and not March included. So we see that these light blue ones are the ones that was captured yesterday. We saw the Russian forces advance by the Assam steel plant, south of the parking lot, capturing the rest of it, as well as this central area all the way up to the road that goes through the center, the T0504 highway. And on top of that, we actually see that today the Russian forces actually managed to capture this central part by the Mirio Street, and the Russian forces have now captured the Bakhmut Freedom Square. So this is a significant propaganda victory for the Russians, as they have captured this monument within the city of Bakhmut, as well as this other monument, which is the main civil administration building in Bakhmut. And capturing this means that the Russian forces now legally control Bakhmut in the sense of the legislative viewpoint. So although they only control 70% of the city, they now control the legislative and legal idea of Bakhmut. On top of that, we see fighting continuing in these areas by the stadium here to the north, by the Hotel Bakhmut area, as well as here in the southern parts in the direction of the city itself, as well as in the southwestern parts by the Ukrainian fortified positions in this area, and in the northern parts where the Russian forces continue their attempts at advancing within the city. So the current objective, as I mentioned in my previous video, the Russian forces are now attempting to gain control over this central area in the eastern part of the currently held Ukrainian territory in Bakhmut. So they want to take everything that's east of the rail lines, as they are trying to cut the area into two and to capture the northern parts separately from the southern part. And it seems that they're focusing on the southern part for now, as although the Russian forces have managed to capture parts in the northern side, we see the advances in the southern side has been much more significant in the past couple of days, as the main focus on the northern part are these industrial zones, which is very difficult to capture compared to the residential areas here in the south. Then we move on to the Ivanivska area, where the Russian forces continue their attacks in the direction of the TO504 highway, as well as in the direction of Ivanivska itself. Then we also see, according to war guns, of fighting by Predeshina, which is here to the west of the canal. Then we move on to the Avdiivka front, where here the Russian forces are attacking the direction of Keramik, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. And we also see fighting here by Kamyanka to the east of Avdiivka. The Rybar team actually reported this as captured by the Russians, but neither Deep State nor Syriac Maps have reported on it, so I'm still keeping it as only fighting occurring. We see here to the southwest of Avdiivka, fighting continues in the direction from Upitne, as well as in the direction of Severne, from the direction of Vodiane, in the direction of Pervomaiske, both to the north and the center, and in the direction of Nevelske to the south of Pervomaiske. Then we move on to the Marinka area, where here the Russian forces continue their attacks to the center of the city, as well as to the north and to the south in the direction of Pobieda, as well as fighting continues in the direction of Novomikhailivka and Uledar here to the south. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to support my content. There's also a link down below in the description and in the pinned comment of my PayPal, as well as my recently released Patreon if you want to support me over there. Now, to add to the trustworthiness of this guy, he reported Bakhmut update, Freedom Square in the center of Bakhmut under PMC Wagner control, and this was before Deep State Map updated it and before the video was released. As we can see here, it was 1:21 a.m. compared to 11:17 p.m., so that's 2 hours earlier. And if we compare it to the video released by Wagner in Prigozhin and so on, that was at 44 a.m. That was 44 minutes past midnight. So comparing these two, we see that the Russian forces, so we see that this was the first one to report on it, and there was an accurate report. So that has added a bit to the trustworthiness of the guy on Twitter. Make sure to follow him if you want to listen to his updates. He posts a lot of videos on the video evidences of the fighting. And that is all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.